For this project, you will need a pencil. I'm using a 4B pencil, a drawing pad, an eraser, preferably a kneaded eraser, and you'll need to download the source image. We're going to be focusing, as we have been, on what I've been calling PPO, that is, proportion, the position or placement, and orientation of the subject matter that we're trying to draw in preparation for our eventual paintings. And again, the three things that create contour lines in our contour drawing are edges, change of color, like where his face is going into his head or breast, and then lastly, shadows. There's not a lot of shadows going on here, but we see a little shadow there, and we could maybe render this area as well. Now, what we'll want to do is start off by framing your paper to the same aspect ratio of your source material. In this case, we're fortunate enough to have actually not just the same aspect ratio, but the same size. Please go ahead and set up the project as shown, and then join us for part 2. And the first thing we're going to do is establish some construction lines. So I'm going to want to do a little bit of measuring, and we're doing that with our pencil. And I'm going to try to figure out, this is kind of a key spot. I'm going to try to figure out where that intersection of the leg intersects with the abdomen and where that is relative to the center of our composition. So I'm just kind of measuring that, and I'm seeing it's a little bit lower than the middle, and it's going to be a little left of middle. So if I can estimate where my center is, I'm going to establish a center there. I said it's a little bit lower and it's a little bit to the left. So we're going to say right about there is the height. And we're going to say right about there is where it is left to right. So if we can now establish some lines to just define where our bird is going to fall, that's going to help us already to establish our gesture lines. Okay. We could also do something similar coming from that spot, coming down, and something like that. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this composition is we have this branch that can really help us with positioning everything. So we can actually use this as one of our construction lines. Again, helping just to establish something that allows us the ability to start creating our gesture lines relative to the exact placement of where everything needs to be. So let's take a look at just drawing big shapes. So let's see this as an oval right here, and I'm needing to drop this oval in within my construction lines. Simplify gesture lines as basic geometric shapes: ovals, rectangles, triangles. And now his head is more or less this triangle that's going something like that. We have another triangle down here. And then we have something of a rectangle coming down. Let's try to get the orientation. My original construction line's already pretty inaccurate, but again, we can use this relative space with that twig to start to define that a little bit better. So there's my gesture lines for the tail. And I see another triangle here. This video is the 4th video in a 5-video set that I did on contour drawing. You can find the complete set on my Patreon page. Just follow the link in the show notes below. Thank you. That triangle originates there and it's coming something like that. Now we're going to go up to his face, and I'd like to know where that eyeball is. That's feeling pretty much center, but a little bit to the left of center. There's our center, so we can say more or less there, which is going to mean his face, which is a square, is going to be something like that. So as you can see, this is looking nothing like a cardinal at the moment, but you can see how our gesture lines are really helping to define the space he's in. And we'd much rather do this than really start drawing a whole bunch of details that might not be the right proportion, might not be the right placement, and might not be the right orientation. So this is helping us with all of those. So if we can take a look at this now and say, hey, am I headed in the right direction? Is this proportion the same? Is the placement of this guy, he's off to the left a little bit, is that right? And is the angle, the orientation, is that correct? And if I'm to evaluate all those things, I feel like we're headed in the right direction, except he's a little plumper than I have him going here. So we're going to make him first a little plumper on that side. And I'm going to refine this a little upward. Our triangle is more like that. We're going to see if that starts to make him feel a little more like the source material. So I think even just those subtle adjustments have helped to put the necessary weight onto him as we need. Just a little thicker. And I also feel like that spot needs to come out a little bit more as well. So just a series of adjustments at this point. We want to think of this drawing as just a series of adjustments, and we don't want to be so invested in what we've already drawn that we can't erase it without surrendering a whole bunch of effort that we've already put into it. We're going to add another triangle for the beak. And if I had to draw it just as a triangle, I think it would look something like that. And then we'll just refine it slightly. It's kind of a triangle and another triangle, so to speak. Eyeball in place. And I think we can add this branch that's going behind the cardinal. And I'm starting to recognize also that if I try to put this leg in here, this little triangle here is turning out to be too small. right? So that means one of two things. Either this branch isn't in the right spot or that the underbelly here, the abdomen, isn't the right spot. And I think, frankly, it's a little bit of both. So I'm going to make that adjustment. Again, no problem when things are incorrect. We haven't invested a lot in this. It's a series of adjustments. And not perfect, but we're closer. Circle for the other claw. Okay. This area here also feels like it needs to be a little bit longer, like this. Good. I think we can also add this branch, which if I'm going to plumb a line from the claw, intersects with the bottom of our image right there, and then arcs just below that triangle of the tail feather or just below the claw. See, the claw is more like that, and the tail feather is more like that. So this reveals a few things. Number one, that this wing feather is too long. That curve, that real subtle curve right there, is even with the abdomen. And evaluating everything, it feels pretty much like it's in the right place. So now we're able to go in. We could continue on with these branches. Frankly, the branches, they could really be anywhere. So we're going to do those after we've put the contour lines in for the cardinal. So let's go up to his crown up here and start adding his funny hairdo. So now we're into our contour lines. Just constantly referencing my source material and adding our contour lines in a way that uses our gesture lines as reference for making these sort of final adjustments. Now, the level of detail that you want to get into in these wings is really up to you. I mean, if I'm going to be painting this, I'm not going to want every feather in there because, frankly, that's got to be painted with the brush. And if I start getting excessive with the details, it really just kind of becomes an annoyance at the time of painting. In the interest of time, we're just going to fast forward through the rendering of the twigs. And I mentioned at the outset, we might add a little bit of a contour line for this shadow. It's going to kind of help the painter to say, okay, I see that there's some kind of shadow going on here, and probably even this extra set of feathers in here. You can kind of see these guys. It's going to look something like that. So there you have a wonderful contour drawing. I hope you've enjoyed drawing along with this project. And don't forget to check out my Patreon page for the full set of contour drawing lessons and additional lessons on oil painting.